So, uh, good morning, Sir Ashish, Dr. Ashish Johari, sir. Just a few minutes, participants are joining.
Of course.
Within the 5 minutes, and everybody will join into 10 to 10 5.
Absolutely.
Uh,
Take your time. No problem from my side.
Thank you. So, good morning, sir, and good morning to all the participants for this energetic session that you are going to have. I think that everybody yesterday you listened to the from other resource persons, and today an eminent personality in the area of uh, what we say that emotional intelligence and authentic leadership and in various aspects what not in almost all is one of the fantastic expert in most of the areas. Just it is my privilege and to introduce and invite to our academic fraternity and who spreads across the nation. So, sir, almost all 250 participants have sent their nominations, but AICT has given the permission to admit only up to 200 because of bandwidth problem or something else. But in spite of that, huge nominations, but even our heart has not accepted to reject the nominations. But as per the rules, and we should have to go by that. So this is about this is the a galaxy of the academicians of our country, and having the different backgrounds from arts, science, engineering, from the various streams they are participating from, and really they are showing a keen interest in learning these aspects and making to be implemented in the coming days. So, in this context, my dear colleagues, and why I am calling my dear colleagues, because I am also the faculty member like you. So, just I have taken a responsibility for these few days and to coordinate and disseminate the knowledge, and which is more useful to our, especially for academic fraternity, and because we are the torchbearers of this knowledge and everything to share with the students. So, I introduce I introduce this is my privilege to introduce such a what we say that multifaceted personality and having the diversified knowledge fields in his mind. Now his presence is really a privilege to all of us, because he's so such a busy person. How he accepts our invitation, even it is surprise to me. So Dr. Ashish Johari is a consultant, Synergy HR. Is a former professor of medical human physiology and management in HR, and he is having the PhD. He is a versatile behavioral training and HR consultant for various corporate business houses and training and development institutions, both government and non-government. He is certified from various national and international level reputed training organizations. Dr. Ashish Johari is a graduate in medicine and holds a PhD in business management, specializing in athletic leadership and emotional intelligence. He has a total of 20 years of experience, out of which 15 years of exclusive and extensive experience has been in the field of HR and behavioral training and consultancy. He is a co-author of a book for MBA curriculum of Rajasthan Technical University. He has published several research papers to his credit in reputed journals. He has made his presence felt in the field of training with a gifted ability to connect with the people and transforming their life from ordinary to extraordinary by helping them to choose their goals. Dr. Johari is driven by his passion for training and has a desire to serve as many people as possible in various fields, and he trains extensively personal excellence, athletic leadership, and team building, and emotional intelligence, NLP, positive psychology, and his corporate clientele are, right, I am mentioning the corporate clientele to whom he is trained, to whom he is training. In IT companies, is the clientele. I am just sharing the clientele of SARS, SAR. That is the first. It's the IT companies: HP, HCL, Xerox, Dell, Cynet Global Technologies, Capita, Ultron Technologies, JK Technosoft, and to the new Digital Private Limited. This is from the software companies, those who are his what we say that the clients. Telecommunication companies: Reliance, Airtel, Prima Telecom, Nokia are his clients. Sorry, are his clients. And in FMCG and retail companies: Colgate, Godrej, Philips, L'Oreal, Anmal Biscuit, Aravind Lifestyles, sorry, Aravind Lifestyles, and there are so many other companies as that. And there are clients from banking and finance also: Axis Banks, Bank of Baroda, ICICI, a few of I have mentioned in the banking and finance, and automobile companies,
Dr.
automobile.
Saab, that
One
is all. That is all.
second, sir. Honda and like other companies, infra building material companies, health and medicine, and online marketing, and BPOs and KPOs. This is a small list of his clients, and to whom he is one of the leading consultants. Really, such a real, really such a person, and now who is making his presence here. Not only that, sorry, sir. Not only that, and he is having the certifications from so many international bodies. So this is a diversification of knowledge you come across. The person who is having the medical background as a graduate and as a PhD in behavioral sciences of management, and a consultant, a trainer, philanthropist, and a spiritualist also, as far as my knowledge is concerned and my relation with him is. So I invite you, sir, to this August, what is the intellectual body of academic community. I hope that all my friends and colleagues, those who are participating in this event, in this 5 days stress management program, in this coming 2 sessions, it might be a lot of takeaway you can get from Ashish Johari, sir. Welcome, sir, Ashish Johari, sir. Please join with us. Namaste,
Thank
sir.
you. Thank you so very much, uh, Dr. Sheikh Kamruddin Sahab. It was a very elaborate introduction. Thank you so much for your love and your affection. I feel happy. I also feel embarrassed. You were so generous and all that stuff. Good morning, dear friends. It's a pleasure and a privilege to be here with all of you. Now, I'd like to share my screen, and I also would like to see you. How can I do that? Can you help me? Or is it okay we do it just like that? How would you want me to do that? Sheikh Sab,
Sir,
um, can I share my presentation screen?
I
I
think
have, yeah.
uh,
Would you want that? Would you want that? I have a presentation with me. If they want to see that presentation, can I do that, or will they
yes,
want
sir,
to?
you can do that, sir. You can do, no problem.
Okay, so I click on present now, and I click. I'm actually more familiar with the. Hmm. So just a minute. Can you see my screen, dear friends?
Yes, sir, you are visible.
Okay, but now the challenge is that I can't see you. So how can I make both the things possible? Does anybody have any idea? Is it possible for me to see you as well as my screen?
So you can
Ash-
watch chat box, sir.
Sir,
Okay,
You can see it, sir.
thing is, because their videos are off, sir, because
okay,
the bandwidth would not cooperate if all the videos
absolutely.
are open. That is
That's
the reason
okay.
we can't see them.
That's okay. That's okay.
Okay.
That's okay. So what we do is I'll run through the presentation. You can see my presentation. If there are any inputs, if there are any comments from your side, I can always visit the chat box, or you can always unmute yourself and drop in between to interact. Will that be fine with you? Yes, Meghna, thank you so much. I've also logged in from my mobile. As you can see, there are two devices. I requested Dr. Saab to allow me the permission, and he very generously agreed to that. So there are two devices I'm logging in. Okay, let's just start. At the very outset, I'd like to express my sincere thanks and my gratitude to Maulana Azad National Urdu University, and especially Dr. Muhammad Yusuf Sahab, and my dear brother, Dr. Sheikh Kamruddin Sahab. First of all, for conceiving this program, a very relevant program in current times, and making me a part of it. That was really very kind, very generous of you. It fills my heart. And like Dr. Sheikh Kamruddin Saab just mentioned, that he's just a faculty member. We all are faculty members. There's nothing great, there is nothing peculiar, there is nothing unique in all of us. There is one common thread that runs through all of us, and that is the thread of academics. All of us belong to the same community, no matter which part of the country we are from, no matter which demographic background we are from. We are all one identity.
Sir, please unmute yourself, sir.
So you are muted.
Sir, please unmute yourself, sir. Johari, sir. Ashish, sir. Ashish, sir, please unmute. Sir, unexpectedly were muted, sir. Please unmute. Okay, sir.
Yes,
Okay. Fine, fine.
yeah, I was just trying to figure out. Actually, as I mentioned, there are two devices I'm logging in. One would show as Dr. Ashish Johri, my name. One is my company's mail ID, which I'm logging in. That is Synergy HR. So it is Synergy HR that you would hear my voice from. My request to the organizers is please don't mute that. Can you see my screen, friends?
No, sir, not yet.
Not yet. Just a minute. Let me just. Sorry for this goof up. Just give me. Can you now see my screen?
No, sir.
I
Yes,
think
sir.
Yes,
yes.
Yes,
Okay.
yes, sir.
Okay. All right. Perfect. So that is how we'll roll, right? So, friends, as we were talking about that, very grateful to this entire community for coming together. I'm just one of you, and today we'll be talking about something which is very very relevant, and not only relevant, it is something which is very close, something that we all as academicians have experienced it at different levels. Ironically, people talk about so many communities being in stress. People talk about the army people, the defense personnel, the doctors nowadays, students, corporate professionals. They talk about their stress. Nobody speaks about the stress that the academic fraternity is put through. Nobody talks about the kind of extreme conditions and extreme circumstances we all go through. I was surprised to find that there is a very less amount of research and less amount of, what shall I say, a sensitivity to the kind of stress that the academic community as a whole has been gone through. Whether it is at the initial school level, or is it at the middle level, or higher secondary or secondary level, or it is at the higher education level, university level. Tremendous stress, and stress of all sorts. Our working hours have extended into our personal lives, and it has been happening even way before Corona struck us, isn't it? We have been split apart between our official responsibilities, our academic responsibilities, our home domestic responsibilities, and our moral responsibilities as well. We all have gone through that. We all go through that, isn't it? So, the kind of stress that we face as academicians, we are no strangers to that. And in such a scenario, for an institution to be sensitive of this aspect of our existence and come together and conceive a program, an entire FDP structured around this idea, is a wonderful, wonderful initiative. And that makes me very grateful, very thankful to this institution, this august, pristine institution, this university, Maulana Azad National Urdu University, and to the people behind it, the harbingers, the conceivers, the thinkers, the director, Dr. Mohammad Yusuf Khan Saab, and of course, the coordinator for this FDP, Dr. Sheikh Amruddin Saab. Thank you so very much for that. So, friends, taking this cue, let me take you through this few minutes of what we have, what the destiny has brought us together across this virtual interaction. I'll be taking you through this presentation. We'll be discussing. My idea would be to stimulate some kind of thinking in your minds. There would be many concepts you would already be familiar with. There would be many concepts you would find new, or maybe the presentation new. You see? So, what I would request for is let me make it a more interactive kind of thing so that we develop some learnings. So, when the session concludes and we depart, each of us takes something of value which will enable us to lead our life in a better way, to maybe make that choice that we have been thinking of making, but we have not been able to make. So I look forward to this journey with all of you. Yeah. Okay. Can you see my slide? Yeah. So overworking is the black plague of the 21st century. Don't you agree? And what has that led to? What has been the outcome? Lifestyle disease, isn't it? So there has been a revolution in medicine concerning how we think about the disease that now afflict us. It involves recognizing the interactions between the body and the mind, the ways in which emotions and personality can have a tremendous impact on the functioning and health of virtually every cell in the body. It's about the role of stress in making some of us more vulnerable to disease, the ways in which some of us cope with the stressors, and the critical notion that we cannot really understand a disease in vacuo, but rather only in the context of the person suffering from that disease. We are all familiar with stress, isn't it? But it's only recently that it has come out and we have begun to have an understanding about the impact it has had on our body, which is what is going to be the subject of the talk today that I'm going to share with you. Let me give you a scenario. It's about, let's say, imagine 2 o'clock in the morning and you are lying in your bed and you have something immensely important and challenging to that next day, a critical meeting, a presentation, maybe a viva, an exam, or a presentation somewhere. You have to get a decent night's rest, but you're still wide awake. You try different strategies for relaxing, take deep slow breaths, try to imagine restful moments, mountain scenery, but instead you keep thinking that unless you fall asleep the next minute, it's going to be a end of the road for you. The career is finished. So you lie there unable to sleep, feeling more tense by the second. Does this sound to be a familiar scenario? If you do this on a regular basis, somewhere around maybe 2:30 or 3 o'clock in the night, when you're really getting very restless, an entire new disruptive chain of thoughts will no doubt intrude upon you. And suddenly, amidst all those other worries, you begin to contemplate, you begin to think of that non specific pain that you've been having in your side. how very exhausted you have been feeling lately, how very dissatisfied with your professional and personal life you have been feeling lately, and that frequent headache, the frequent dizziness. And then the realization hits you: am I sick? Is something wrong with me? Why didn't I recognize the symptoms? Why did I have to deny it? I have been neglecting my health. I should have gone to the doctor. And all those thoughts about your well being, they start, you know, coming. Does this scene sound familiar? We keep imagining diseases. A few of us lie feeling convinced that the bodies are, you know, in being infected or some malady is being developed. These are all manifestations of that, what shall I say, subliminal stress that we all have been feeling through. A familiar sight, isn't it? Something has happened in the past few years or few decades, last 2 3 decades that we have been going through. There has been a revolutionary advances in medicine, and not only advances in medicine but their impact on public health. And one thing that has changed, that has drastically changed, has been our patterns of diseases. We do not lie awake in the night thinking of infectious diseases. Not, at least not to the people, the kind of segment that we come from, or the diseases of poor nutrition or hygiene. But our current patterns of diseases that we have would be unrecognizable to our great grandparents. If some of us are lucky enough to be living with them, or if they are still there with us, you would tell them, you would hear from them talking that they never heard these diseases, and you will see that they don't suffer from the diseases that we suffer. Don't you think so? So we get different diseases and are likely to die in different ways than most of our ancestors did. Our nights are filled with worries about a different class of diseases. We are now living well enough and long enough to slowly fall apart. And the disease that plague us are now ones of what? Slow accumulation of damage. You talk about heart disease, you talk about cancer, you talk about cerebrovascular disorders. You know, for once we have bypass done, or the clogging of the arteries, or the coronary artery disease, or the angioplasty being done, all those diseases are degenerative diseases. They are diseases in which damage has been slowly accumulating. Does that make sense to you? We have come to recognize the vastly complex intertwining of our biology and our emotions, the endless ways in which our personalities, feelings, and thoughts both reflect and influence the event in our bodies. And one of the most interesting manifestation of this recognition is understanding that extreme emotional disturbances can adversely affect us, isn't it? Put in the parlance with which we have grown familiar, stress can make us sick. And a critical shift in the medicine has been the recognition that many of the damaging diseases of slow accumulation can be either caused or made far worse by stress. And that is how stress has been impacting our physical and mental health. Since the 20th century, the addition of rigorous science to these vague clinical perception has made a discipline called stress physiology, which is basically the study of how the body responds to stressful events, a real discipline. As a result, there is now an extraordinary amount of physiological, biological, and molecular information available to us as to how all sorts of intangibles in our lives can affect our real bodily events. And these intangibles often include the emotional turmoil, the psychological characteristics, our position in the society, and how our society treats people of that position, all that stuff. And they can influence medical issues such as, does the cholesterol gums up our blood vessels or is safely cleared from the circulation? Do our fat cells stop listening to the insulin and plunge us into diabetes? Or whether the neurons in our brain will survive 5 minutes without oxygen during a cardiac arrest. Make sense to you? And that is why, dear friends, I have a thought here which we'll explore as we move further during the day. All disease originate in the mind. Nothing appears in the body unless there is a mental pattern corresponding to it. Have a look at your slide. See what the slide tells you. If I ask you to make a list of the stressors or of the list of things that you find stressful, what comes to your mind? You can use the chat box. Acha, I wanted to ask, till this time, are we going good? Do you want any change in the way we are conducting this session?
No, sir,
Oh,
you're wonderful.
oh, thank you so much. Thank you
Nothing,
so,
sir. Nothing.
thank you so very much. Thank you. I'm grateful to you. I'm grateful to you. So my question to you was the kind of list of things that you find is stressful. You can use the chat box. Somebody said deadlines, fear, expectations, okay, being more responsible, fear, not able to meet people, dealing with politics, yes, critical time, execution, fear, fear, conflict causes stress, yes, of course. Kids not studying properly, oh, that is the biggest form of stress that we all as parents face. Extreme fear. Yeah, thank you. Thank you, dear friends. So, I'm surprised none of you mentioned the traffic. Is that not a source of a stress? Traffic? Oh, then, I mean, there was a time when Hyderabad was known for its traffic blues, but that was a long time back. But if there is anybody from Bangalore or from Delhi for that matter, in time login, oh, that that's good. That's a good one. So you see, I'm surprised you don't mention the largest yet unsaid source of stress, and that is our family relationships. Family relationships. That is the money matters. The money matters. I don't know how many of you have an EMI going on. How many of you have an EMI and not a regular job? Think about the stress of that person. Something which has come up in these COVID times. So these are the obvious examples: traffic, deadlines, family relationships, money worries, and of course, all that hoard, all that list which you just mentioned. But what if I said you are thinking like a human? Think like a zebra for an instant. The zebra that you think that you see in the screen before you. Now, if I ask you to think like a, yes, survival, new items might appear at the top of your list: serious physical injury, predators, starvation. So the need for that prompting illustrates something critical. And that is, you and I are more likely to get an ulcer than a zebra is. So, so for our animals like zebra, the most upsetting things in life are acute physical crisis. You are a zebra, the lion has just leapt out and ripped your stomach open. You have managed to get away, and now you have to spend the next hour evading the lion as it continues to stalk you. Or perhaps just as stressfully, you are that lion, half starved, and you had better be able to sprint across the savannah at top speed and grab something to eat, or you won't survive. So these are extremely stressful events, and they demand immediate physiological adaptations if you're going to live. Your body's responses are brilliantly adapted for handling this sort of emergency. This is biological, this is genetic, this is something that we have been, given, we have been born with. An organism can also be plagued by chronic
So you are muted. So please unmute your mic.
I'm sorry. I'm so sorry, dear friends. I don't know how it happened. Maybe I make my hand movement too much. Give me a minute. I'm so sorry for that. Please excuse me. Please excuse me. Don't be. Okay. Can you see my screen? Can you hear me? Okay.
Yes,
Thank
sir.
you. Thank you so very much. Thank you, Dr. Praveen. That's very encouraging. I may tell you that I may be talking about stress right now, but right now I am under a tremendous stress because I have to make this presentation in front of superbly learned people I know who have tremendous knowledge. And I don't know, I have no clue how much relevance, how much sense I am talking in front of them. So I am under a tremendous stress. Please keep encouraging me in the chat box. Please keep telling me that I'm doing a nice job. That will be very grateful to you. I'll be very grateful to you for that. All right. So imagine a chronic, we spoke about physical crisis. Imagine a chronic physical challenge. We have been existing like a civilization for about what, 5,000 years at the max, but we have been existing in human species for almost 1 lakh years. That is how we have evolved. We were basically farmers to grow food for our needs. Imagine that situation. The locusts have eaten the crops, and for the next 6 months, I have to wander a few dozen miles a day to get enough food. Drought, famine, parasites, that sort of unpleasantness. Not the sort that we experience often in our current scenario, but there are central events in the lives of many on this planet, and of course, most other mammals. So, this sort of chronic physical challenge, the body's stress responses are reasonably good at handling these sustained disasters. But there is a third category of ways to get upset, a psychological and social disruption. Yeah. Regardless of how poorly we are getting along with a family member or how incensed we are about losing a parking spot, we rarely settle that sort of thing with a fist fight. Likewise, it is a rare event when we have to stalk and personally wrestle down our dinner. Essentially, we humans live well enough and long enough and are smart enough to generate all sorts of stressful events purely in our heads. So, you understand now? Do you understand now? As humans, our stress events, our crisis events are not about survival. It has to do more with our imagination, with something we imagine which is not real, our responses we imagine. And that is where our sources of stress. It comes. Please have a look at this thought. You see, viewed from the perspective of the evolution, viewed from the perspective of the evolution of the animal kingdom, sustained psychological stress is a recent invention, mostly limited to humans and other social primates. We can experience wildly strong emotions, and these emotions provoke our bodies into an accompanying uproar. And these emotions, these strong emotions, can be linked to mere thoughts. Do you see sense in what I'm talking about? Have a look at your screen. You will. Can you recognize these people? These two people. These are two very well-known personalities in the chess world. One is Gary Kasparov, and the another is Anatoly Karpov. They were grandmasters of chess. Yes, of course, Vijaya. Thank you so very much. Two people can sit facing each other doing nothing more physically strenuous than merely moving little pieces of wood every now and then. And yet, this can be an emotionally taxing event. Look at the activity in their mind. Look at the emotional upheaval going on in their mind. And this activity, this emotional activity, can place metabolic demands on their body that begin to approach those of athletes during the peak of a competitive event. You understand what I'm talking about? So if Usain Bolt is running at 100-meter race, the kind of activity that he needs, physical as well as emotional, would be similar to the activity going on inside the mind of these two people who are supposedly doing nothing except sitting with their suits on and moving wooden pieces. That is the impact. Like another example I give you. A person can do nothing more exciting than signing a piece of paper. But if he or she has just signed an order to fire a hated rival after months of plotting and maneuvering, the physiological responses might be shockingly similar to those of a savanna baboon who has just lunged and slashed the face of a competitor. So seemingly, you know, acts which do not manifest a lot of physical activity, but which warrant a lot of emotional inside working of the mind going on, they elicit the same responses. That is the point I'm trying to drive forth here. So imagine if someone spends months on end twisting his innards in anxiety and anger and tension over some emotional problem. This might very well lead to illness. You fretting over the thesis, you fretting over the research paper that you could not complete, which will have an impact on your promotion. You fretting over the evaluation load that you have been just burdened with, or you fretting over conducting those extra online classes. Over a period of time, if you worry too much on that, that is the road you'll be taking to. Make sense? Make sense, dear
Yes,
friends?
sir. Yes, sir.
So if you are that zebra running for your life or that lion sprinting for your meal, your body's physiological response mechanisms are superbly adapted for dealing with such a short-term physical emergencies. For the vast majority of beasts of this planet, stress is about a short-term crisis, after which either it's over or you are over. When we sit around and worry about stressful things, we turn on the same physiological response, but they are potentially a disaster when provoked chronically. A large body of evidence suggests that stress related disease emerges predominantly out of the fact that we so often activate a physiological system that has evolved for responding to acute physical emergencies. And acute here means short term, immediate. But when we turn it on for months on end, worrying about EMIs and mortgages and relationships and promotions and positions and all that stuff, you know, that is where the damage hits. Let me take you through. What do you see? What do you see on the screen? I hope you're able to see my screen. What do you see here? One boat, okay. A boat, just a boat.
Sunset.
Sunset, okay, or an evening as well. Beautiful sunset. Thank you, Sultana. Beautiful sunset, okay. Calmness, nature's beauty. Nupur, thank you so much for that. I'm so glad you were able to make this observation. Calm and furious water. Yes. Boat trying to sail, cool water, relaxing moment. What about the other?
A boat tied to the bank.
A boat tied to the bank. Thank you. Good observation there.
Yes, Lord.
Thanks. How can I see your screen? Vivek, you are not able to see my screen. It is there. Everybody can see the screen. Please check at your end. I must call forth a concept that you were tortured with in what? Maybe when you were younger, seventh or eighth class, biology class. And the concept was homeostasis. Yeah. The dimly remembered concept, the idea that the body has an ideal level of oxygen that it needs, an ideal level of acidity, an ideal temperature, and so on. So all these different variables are maintained in homeostatic balance, the state in which all sorts of physiological measures are being kept at the optimal level. The brain, as it has been noted, has evolved to seek homeostasis. This allows us to generate some simple initial working definitions. Okay, so when you see the picture displayed on your left, this is the condition of homeostasis. Everything is in balance, calm, still. You see? You see the skies, you see the water, you see the surface of the water, you see the boat, stable, calm. This is the condition of homeostasis.
Sir Vivek Dikshit, please don't share your screen.
Why?
Vivek Dikshit is sharing the screen.
Should I stop sharing the screen?
No, no, not you, sir. Some Vivek Dikshit. He is sharing the screen.
Okay, okay. So this is Purna who's telling me not to share the screen. Is that correct?
No, 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 sir.
Now,
I'm asking you to share the screen. But Mr. Dikshit, he was sharing the screen. Now it's okay. Now it's okay.
now it's okay.
Now it's okay.
Okay, thanks very much. You can see my screen now.
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Okay. And my mobile device that I'm logged in, I'm not able to see my screen. I don't know what is.
No, sir. We are unable to see your screen, sir.
That is what I don't know.
Yes, sir, your
But shall,
screen is not visible.
Since Vivek shared, your screen has gone out of the picture.
so what?
Please restart
So,
or
so
again.
shall I stop sharing my screen and start sharing it again?
So, yes.
Shall I do that?
Yeah, yeah,
Hello,
please.
so
Yes.
Yeah.
don't do that. Hello, my suggestion is
Yeah.
that
So you continue. Please, all the participants are requested to please pin the screen presentation. You can pin, you just click on the pin icon so that there will not be any disturbance.
Yes, sir. Done. It's
All right.
visible now.
Okay. Yeah. So you can continue. That's good one.
Okay. Thank you so very much. I'm so grateful for these inputs, and that is what happens when you are in the company of intelligent people who come up with solutions. Thank you so very much, ma'am. Thank you so very much. Actually, this Google Meet, personally, I must confess, please don't make any wrong impression, but I'm not very familiar with Google Meet. I always find Zoom to be a much better platform, but that is not a complaint. That is just an observation. So, shall I go ahead? You can.
Yes, sir.
Oh,
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yes,
Yes.
sir.
great.
Sir, yes,
Thank
sir.
you. So this is the homeostasis condition, the figure that you see displayed on your left hand side, the boat. Uh, I can't see your screen, sir. मैं एक काम करता हूँ. I'll do one thing. I'll stop sharing and again start sharing it. Will that be fine with you then? Yes. Now I think everybody can see.
Yes,
Perfect.
sir.
Perfect. Let me have a sip of water, please. All right. So as I was saying that this is the condition of homeostasis and this is the condition of stress. Imagine, go back to your experience. Go back to your experience when you have witnessed calmness or homeostasis for that matter, and when you have been in stress. So, from this, we can attempt to derive, we can attempt to come at a description or a definition about what stress is all about. A stressor is anything in the outside world that knocks you out of your homeostatic balance. And the stress response is what your body does to reestablish homeostasis. You understand what I'm talking about? So, when somebody says that you are under a lot of stress, or when you yourself feel that you are under a lot of stress, that is your body trying to fight the external agent that is overpowering you or trying to disturb your calmness. And that calmness is of any type: physical, mental, emotional, financial, relational, spiritual, anything. See, when we consider ourselves and our human propensity to worry ourselves sick, we have to expand on the notion of stresses merely being things that knock us out of our homeostatic balance. A stressor can also be the anticipation of that happening. Sometimes we are smart enough to see things coming, and based only on anticipation, on expectation, somebody mentioned that earlier, we can turn on a stress response which is going to be as robust, as vigorous as if the event had actually occurred. You are going to have a presentation, and God forbid you have not failed, you have not put up a poor show, but yet you feel as though the presentation has gone haywire. Your husband is probably late from work, and you have all sorts of fancy notions. Or probably you are late from work and your husband has fancy notions. That is a stress response. Some aspects of anticipatory stress are not unique to humans. Whether you are a human surrounded by a bunch of thugs in a deserted subway station or a zebra face to face with a lion, your heart is probably racing, even though nothing physically damaging has occurred. But unlike less cognitively sophisticated species, we can turn on the stress responses by thinking about potential stresses that may throw us out of homeostatic balance far in the future. For example, think of a farmer watching a swarm of locusts descending on his crops. He has eaten an adequate breakfast and is not suffering the homeostatic imbalance of a starving. But that farmer will still be undergoing a stress response. You see, animals may see trouble coming in the next minute and mobilize a stress response in anticipation, but they can't get stressed about events far in the future, which is what us humans do. And sometimes we humans can be stressed by things that simply make no sense at all. It is not general a mammalian trait to become anxious about mortgages or stuff like that, about public speaking or fears of what we will say about a job interview or about the inevitability of death. Our human experience is replete with psychological stressors, which is very, very departing, which is very, very different from the physical world of hunger, injury, blood loss, or temperature extremes. These are the regular events in the other animal world who create stresses. But for us, it is more of a psychological type. So when we activate the stress response out of fear of something that turns out to be real, we congratulate ourselves that this cognitive skill allows us to mobilize our defenses early. And these anticipatory defenses can be quite protective. But when we get into a physiological uproar and activate the stress response for no reason at all over something we cannot do anything about, we call it things like anxiety, neurosis, paranoia, or hostility. Yes, isn't it? So the stress response can be mobilized not only to respond to a physical or psychological insults, but also in expectation of them. And it is generally this stress response that is most surprising. A physiological system activated not only by all sorts of actual physical disasters, but also by just thinking about them. And that is what happens with us. Tell me if I'm wrong. Tell me if you have any different thoughts. I'd like to see your comments. Does it make sense to you? Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much.
You're
Thank
absolutely
you.
right, sir.
Thank you so very much. This is how the world of stress operates around us. So now the question is, how does a body adapt to an acute stressor? How does a body, uh, but since we have the ability of, I'm sorry, I missed out that comment. I think it was by Sultana Madam. Am I again not being? Am I facing audio issues again?
No, sir,
Okay,
you're
thank
No,
you,
sir,
audible.
you're audible.
thank you so very much. Okay, so a stressor, as I said earlier, can be defined as something that throws your body out of your homeostatic or allostatic balance. And your stress response is your body's attempt to restore homeostasis or allostasis. Homeostasis or allostasis are two very interrelated terms with the similar meaning. I will not go into the details of the definition. Okay, the secretion of, just get an idea. Allostasis is the brain coordinating with your different centers, ensuring secretion of different hormones, trying to bring or restore balance. That comes under allostasis or allostatic mechanism. You know, the secretion of certain hormones, the inhibition of others, the activation of particular parts of the nervous system, and so on. And regardless of the stressor, injured, starving, temperature extreme, or psychology, you turn on the same stress response. So what I'm essentially trying to say is that when your kid does not study or when your deadlines do not meet, or when your boss rubs you the wrong way, or when your class doesn't perform the way they should, or when you are caught in a traffic jam, what you feel, what your body reacts is the same way it would have if 1 million years before you would have been in a forest surrounded by a pack of wolves. It's the same situation for you. The mind conceives it the same way and it reacts in the same way. You see, for us vertebrates, the core of the stress response is built around the fact that your muscles are going to work like crazy, and thus the muscles need energy right now in the most readily utilizable form rather than stored away somewhere in your fat cells for some building project. One of the hallmarks of the stress response is the rapid mobilization of energy from the storage sites. Where do we store energy in our body? We store energy in the form of fat. That is why when we eat a lot, the excess energy gets stored in our fat. Those fat is the storage of energy. And when we exercise, we burn out those fat and we lose some weight. That is what we do. But that energy has been stored so that it can be taken out when we are needing, when there is some kind of emergency that is happening. You would have seen people who have been sick. You would have seen people who have been under a great deal of emotional stress losing weight. Why do they lose weight? They lose weight because the hormones there, because their brain is not able to conceive whether the stress that they are experiencing is because of the emotion. The brain thinks that they are in the same response which they would have had they been surrounded by wild animals fighting for their survival. So what does the hormones do? They start breaking the fat cells because they think that the body needs more energy. And that is why they lose weight, people under emotional stress. You making sense out of it. So as I was saying, the hallmarks of a stress response is the rapid mobilization of energy from the storage sites and the inhibition of further storage. So what happens? Glucose and the simplest form of proteins and fats come pouring out of your fat cells, your livers and muscles, and to whatever muscles is needed, that focus is directed there. If your body has mobilized all that glucose, it also needs to deliver it to the critical muscles as rapidly as possible. So for the delivery, how does the body transport? It transports through the bloodstream. You see, what pumps the blood? The heart. So the heart rate will go up, the blood pressure will go up, the breathing rate will grow up, and all this to transport the nutrients and oxygen at a greater rate. And if you notice, when the heart rate goes up, you become susceptible, vulnerable to heart diseases. When the blood pressure consistently goes up, you become susceptible to blood pressure. And these two diseases are associated with stress. That is how the connection happens. Can you see the impact now? That is how it impacts. Equally logical is another feature of the stress response. During an emergency, it makes sense that your body halts long-term expansive building projects, isn't it? If there is a tornado bearing down, some storm that is coming, we witness a lot of cyclones, isn't it? So you don't build a house when a cyclone is coming. So what do? You hold that off. You wait for the cyclone to pass off. So what happens when there is an acute stress or acute stress response that is happening? Because in the face of a stressor, the body is reacting to that acute emergency. So what does the body hold off? The body holds off digestion because there isn't time to derive the energetic benefits of the slow process of digestion. So why waste energy on it? So what do? The digestion goes off. So when you are in a period of stress, you would feel less hunger. You will assimilate less food and the energy levels will be depleted. And not only, have you noticed that? Bhook nahi lagti, you don't feel hungry at all. You don't feel the zeal to eat. You eat for the sake of eating, but it doesn't, get assimilated in your body. Why? Because the body is busy with the stress response. And not only that, dear friends, the same thing goes for growth and reproduction. Now, why I'm bringing that aspect here? Because if you see, for us as a human being, as a species to survive, there are two critical factors. One, of course, is feeding, another is reproduction. And when the impact on reproduction was studied, they found that you know uh, when during stress, the growth and the tissue repair is curtailed. The reproductive function, the drive that promotes reproduction, is decreased. Even with the females, the ovulation cycle is impacted. And that is why, if you see around, there is a greater increase of infertility rising in females of that reproductive age. And there is a medical report that says that the sperm count has been consistently decreasing in the males of reproductive age, all related to stress. Leave aside this. Let's talk about immunity. The immunity is also inhibited. The immune system, which defends against infections and illnesses, is ideal for spotting the tumor cells or making enough antibodies to protect you for a few weeks. But when the body is witnessing a stress, is it really needed? The logic is the same. We will look for tumors some other time. We would prepare antibodies some other time. Let's now focus on countering this stress. So what happens? That the immunity also goes down. You become more susceptible to infections, whether it is common cold or cough or another infection. There is a series. So you will find people who are stressed out falling sick more often. Go back to your experience, go back to your department. And if your HODs, if there's some person who's regularly taking leaves because he is sick, and you can see that he or she, think, is there something at a subconscious level that the person is experiencing? Think deeper than that. There is another feature of a stress response that becomes very apparent during the times of extreme physical pain. With sufficiently sustained stress, our perception of pain can become blunted. It's the middle of a battle. Imagine. Soldiers are storming a stronghold. A soldier is shot, grievously injured, and the man doesn't even notice it. He'll see blood on the clothes and worry that one of his buddies near him has been wounded, or he'll wonder why his insides feel very numb. But as the battle fades, someone will point with amazement at his injury, and he would be left wondering, it didn't hurt that time. So this is known as stress-induced analgesia. It is highly adaptive, well documented. But when you neglect injuries to the body, either physical or otherwise, you ultimately end up hurting your own body. Making sense? Finally, a very important aspect there. During stress, shifts occur in cognitive and sensory skills. Suddenly, certain aspects of memory improve. You see, you keep recalling events. When you are alert, stress makes you alert, right? Because you want to figure out how to move out of that. But when you become alert, you become more aware of negative impressions and negative memory as well. Your senses become sharper and become more responsive. So things for which you initially earlier did not respond too much, now your response to them is heightened. So you become irritable on minor things as well. Are there people like this around you? Yeah.
I- It's not around us. We are the ones who actually irritate others, I think, because of the stress.
Yes. You see, if then that is a very important aspect of it, that if I am at the stress, it doesn't affect me. If I am a part of the group, which I am, I start impacting others as well. So it is important that we pay attention to it, not from others perspective, but from us as well. So it is important that if I and you are working together, it is important that both of us remain stress free, so that we are not in a position to impact each other's mental and social well-being. And that's an important aspect, and yet it is neglected. Okay, I'll just quickly run through, because I think we are running short on time. uh, it's an ignorant state. It believes that everything is an emergency and nothing is that important. There are three stages to a stress response. One is the alarm, another is the adaptation. It is the third stage, exhaustion, that I would like to talk about. See, as you can see that you know stress response is the body's natural response that is happening. So there are a lot of chemicals, hormones which come to our fray. It is a response that normally we would have had in a normal crisis, as we have already mentioned. But the third stage is the stage where all the resources have been depleted because of the chronic is- response to the this thing, you know, stress. So we are. This is a condition in which we are constantly mobilizing energy at the cost of energy storage. And when we do that, we'll never store any surplus energy. So what happens? We fatigue more. Our risk of developing a form of diabetes will increases. The consequences of chronically activating the cardiovascular systems are equally damaged. The BP rises to 180, 100 when you are sprinting away from a lion. But if you are being adaptive, it is 180, 100 every time you see a mess, either in your teenager's bedroom, or in your class, or in your office space. And that is where we are heading towards a cardiovascular disaster. If we constantly turn off long-term building projects in our body, reparative projects in the body, just because, as I said earlier, the body is busy fighting the stress, nothing is ever repaired. So we become more at risk for diseases like peptic ulcer. And it has been documented that in kids, it even leads to an impact on their growth. Imagine. All this is a feature of the third stage that I mentioned here on the screen, that is exhaustion. So all of this is pretty grim. In the face of repeated stresses, we may be able to precariously reattain allostasis or homeostasis, as we have been talking about, but it doesn't come cheap. And the efforts to reestablish that balance will eventually wear us down. Let me give you an example. Sorry. Think of it as two elephants on a seesaw. And that is the model of a stress related disease that we can use to better understand ourselves. So what you see on your screen is a makeshift kind of seesaw, right? You put two little kids on a seesaw and they can pretty readily balance themselves. Yeah, you would have seen kids playing. So this is a allostatic balance of our body when nothing stressful is going on, with the children representing the low levels of the various stress hormones that will be present in the body. In contrast, the torrents of those same stress hormones released by a stressor can be thought of as two massive elephants on the seesaw. Now imagine two elephants on the seesaw. First of all, with great effort, they can balance themselves as well. But if you constantly try to balance a seesaw with two elephants instead of two little kids, all sorts of problems will emerge. Yes? First, the enormous potential energies of the two elephants are consumed balancing the seesaw. So instead of being able to do something more useful like mowing the lawn or paying the bills, this is equivalent to diverting energy from various long term building projects. And when I say building projects, I mean constructive things in order to solve short term stressful emergencies. That is what the body's attention is diverted. Secondly, by using two elephants to do the job, the damage will occur just because of how large, lumbering, and unsubtle the elephants are. They squash the flowers in the process of entering the playground. They'll strew leftovers and garbage all over the place from the frequent snacks they must eat while balancing the seesaw, and they will wear out the seesaw faster, and so on. Isn't it? So this is equivalent to a pattern of a stress-related disease that will run through, the course of time when we as a body are exposed to it. And it is hard to fix one major problem in the body without knocking something else out of balance. So we may be able to solve one bit of imbalance brought on during the stress by using the elephants, but such greater quantities of those hormones can make a mess of something else in the process. And this, imagine, the long history of doing this produces wear and tear throughout the body. And this is what is known as allostatic load. That is the term we use. There is another, a final subtle problem. When two elephants are balanced on a seesaw, it is tough for them to get off. Either one hops off and the other comes crashing to the ground, or there is an extremely delicate task of coordinating their delicate, lithe leaps at the same time. This is a metaphor for another theme. Sometimes stress related disease can arise from turning off the stress response too slowly or turning off the different components of the stress response at different speeds. When the secretion rate of one of the hormones of the stress response returns to normal, yet another hormone is being secreted like mad. And it can be equivalent of one elephant suddenly being left alone on the seesaw. So what happens? It crashes to the earth. So bottom line that we need to understand is far more relevant to us. Far more relevant than just sitting frustrated in the traffic jams, worrying about the expenses, mulling over tense interaction with the colleagues. If we repeatedly turn on the stress response, or if we cannot turn off the stress response at the end of a stressful event, the stress response can eventually become damaging. You see? And a large percentage of what we think of when we talk about stress related diseases are disorders of excessive stress response. Make sense? Make sense?
Certainly, sir.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Sir.
Can you relate that to the happenings around you in your life, in the lives of people around you, at your office, your home, your friend circle, your social circle? That is how it impacts. That is how it impacts. There is another thought that I would like to put forth here. Now, to state that chronic or repeated stresses can increase your risk of being sick is actually little incorrect, but in a subtle way that will initially seem like semantic nitpicking. It's never really the case that a stress makes you sick or even increases your risk of being sick. In stress increases your risk of getting diseases that make you sick. You understand? Or if you have such a disease, God forbid, stress increases the risk of your defenses being overwhelmed by the disease. This distinction is important in a few ways. First, by putting more steps between a stressor and getting sick, there are more explanations for the individual differences. Why only some people wind up actually getting sick? So that has to be taken into account. Moreover, by clarifying the progression between stresses and illness, it becomes easier to design ways to intervene in the process. Finally, it begins to explain why the stress concept often seems so suspect or slippery to many medical practitioners. So, medical practitioners often say, in effect, you feel sick because you have disease X, not because of some nonsense having to do with the stress. However, this ignores the stress's role in bringing about or worsening the disease in the first place. So, we've been talking a lot about the physical, the stresses impact on the physical health. Let's move it, let's shift it, take it further up to the impact on the mental health. Okay. So when you talk about mental health, when we speak of mental health is a state of well-being in which an individual realizes his or her own abilities, can cope up with the normal stresses of life, can work productively, and is able to make a contribution to his or her community. That is what is known as the mental health. It refers to cognitive, behavioral, and emotional well being. It is all about how people think, feel, and behave. People sometimes use the term mental health to mean the absence of a mental disorder. But WHO stresses that mental health is more than just the absence of avoiding active condition, but also looking after ongoing wellness and happiness. They also emphasize that preserving and restoring mental health is crucial on an individual basis, as well as throughout different communities and societies the world over. Have a look at the slide and just reflect on the statement that is displayed here. And that's a classic condition where mental health impact or mental health challenges happen. You know, there is a term which is being used nowadays. It is known as leavism. Leavism, Leaveism. Have you ever come across this term? Leavism is a term that describes the growing tendency of individuals to be unable to switch off from work. They're unable to switch off from the work. And you can relate, all of us can relate to that. Previously, uh, there used to be a fixed time, 9 o'clock, the university starts, the classes start, 3 o'clock, they get over, or maybe 6 o'clock, they get over. I am back. When I'm there at my home, nobody disturbs me. The next day, I reach out to my university office, to my department, my classes are on, I'm again on there. The home front doesn't disturb me. But now, it seems as though 24 hours I am spending time in the university. Even when I am sleeping, there is a wheel, there is a reel going on, a movie going on. Yes, Sultana Begum, people in academics work round the clock. So, what has happened? You are unable to switch off from the work. It is said that academicians get leaves. They don't. Because even during the so called vacations, you are working. Half of the vacation goes by in the correction work. The remaining half goes by in preparing for the coming semester or the coming year. And if you have got a couple of research papers to write, or if you got a couple of courses to develop, or some conferences to organize, there are no vacations. So you're unable to switch off from the work. That's what leavism is. It is being increasingly common as working remotely and flexible working has become easier thanks to technology and can lead to overworking a reduction in workforce morale and burnout. And these are ample, ripe areas of mental health challenge. But let me take you through the bottom line, how or what impacts mental health, what is a critical factor in impacting mental health. So health, if you see, if you notice, health has been defined or described as a sense of equilibrium. Okay, and what disturbs this equilibrium are sometimes known as emotions, constructive and destructive emotions. That is how we categorize them. Emotions become destructive the moment they disrupt the mind's equilibrium. And that is the criteria which Dalai Lama himself mentioned in one of his talks. You see, the calmness, the tranquility, the balance of the mind are immediately disturbed or disrupted. And our emotions do not destroy equilibrium or the sense of well being as soon as they arise, but the category in which they enhance that equilibrium, they are the constructive emotion. The brain, it seems, does not make any clean distinction between thought and emotion, as every region in the brain has been found to play some role in emotions, has also been connected with other aspects of cognition. The circuitry for emotion and cognition are intertwined. So they form a complex interlinking web in responding to stress. And that is what we will devote the next few minutes of discussion. I'm sorry, I will take 5 to 7 minutes extra. Will that be okay with you all? I hope. Do I have your permission, dear friends?
Sure, sir.
Thank you. Thank you. That's very kind of you. I would like to take you through what happens on the emotional plane, what happens in the brain when we are subjected to the stress. What has happened in the past 20 years or so is that there has been massive leaps and bounds of development in the field of emotion circuitry and the role of brain in perceiving emotions and emotions impacting our day-to-day activities, our responses, and all that stuff. It's a topic which is very close to my heart. Uh, but nevertheless, the time constraints are there with us, so we'll try to just give you a gist of what it is all about. So, dear friends, one of the most important things that we have learned in neuroscience is that any kind of complex behavior, such as emotion, is not based in a single area of the brain. Now, we understand that having balanced emotional state is a precursor, is a prerequisite for having better mental health. Stress disturbs this mental health, so it disturbs our emotional state also. So, what we are trying to understand is what are the centers in the brain that govern our emotions and how they are interlinked. So, by understanding them, we can arrive or we can arrive at an understanding of the complex interplay between the thoughts, the feelings, and the emotions. The many parts of the brain work together to produce complex behavior. There is no one center for emotion, just as there is none for playing tennis or for anything complicated. It involves interactions across different brain areas. So, you have the frontal lobe right behind the forehead. If you can see my cursor on the screen, this is the frontal lobe. This area is the area which is right behind your forehead. Okay? It is a critical zone for regulating emotion. I'll talk about that. Another was the parietal lobe, an area where the representations from different senses such as vision, hearing, and touch all come together. This is the parietal lobe, roughly. You can see my cursor there on the screen. The parietal lobe also plays a role in mental representation, such as when we picture something in the mind's eye, this is where it happens. All the senses meet here, all the sensory storage is done here. The frontal lobes here, this is the frontal lobe, this is the upper portion of parietal lobe, this is the motor lobe. Okay, occipital also we call it. This is the temporal region. Frontal lobes here are the brain's executive center and they play a role in regulating emotions. Another key region for emotions is the amygdala. You see this blue region here? This is known as the amygdala. It's a very key, very important region for the regulation of emotions. This amygdala is very critical for certain kinds of negative emotions, particularly fear. So somebody mentioned when we started this talk that what is that which we feel stressful about. Somebody mentioned, many of you mentioned fear. So how are we able to perceive fear? This amygdala here, this is the seat for perceiving fear. This gas, people in whom this region is more activated, more responsive, have more, they respond to fear more easily, more quickly, more deeply. And when they respond to fear more deeply, their stress response is based on the fear that they feel. You see? And because they are hyper responsive, so this emotion is very, very prominent in them. Do I make sense, dear friends? Those of you who mentioned that, can you relate back to your responses?
Yes, sir.
There is another, structure. It is not mentioned in this diagram. This is known as hippocampus. This has a very important role in emotion because it is essential for our appreciation of the context of events. Context means the surroundings in which an event happens. So let's say, for example, I might be in a situation where good things happen to me. For example, my home where I feel secure and loved by my family. So just the act, please click on the hide. Oh, okay. Sorry. Thank you. Thank you for pointing that out. I wish you would have told me that earlier. So just the act of going into that physical environment is comforting. So the appreciation of that physical environment is a context, you see, and that involves the hippocampus. Some emotional disorders involve abnormalities in the hippocampus, particularly depression and post-traumatic stress disorder. The hippocampus provides us with information about the context and helps govern emotional responses so that they are appropriate to the context. And I'll take you deeper into it. One problem in emotional disorders is the expression of emotion in inappropriate context. For example, depression. It is normal to feel sad when you lose someone who's close to you. That is a context. The context is that someone has died close to you and you are sad. But if it is the same sadness you experience when none of that event has occurred, that is a condition of depression. What has happened? For simple thing, your response is more pronounced. And that is because hippocampus has been involved. Getting sense out of it? There is this another area, this yellow area. This is known as ventromedial prefrontal cortex. PFC is prefrontal cortex. This is the prefrontal cortex. This is the ventromedial area. This is very, very critical for emotions. People who have damage to this area, this, where my cursor is, the yellow area, VMPFC we call it. People who have damage to this area of brain, they show unregulated, disrupted emotional behavior such as outbursts. The brain area that are involved in initially activating an emotion are different from the brain area that are involved in regulating an emotion. So if amygdala here, the blue area here, it activates an emotion, that is the fear, the prefrontal cortex regulates it. And when the it has the this is how the balance occurs, because this prefrontal cortex is the seat for cognition, for thinking, for reasoning, and that is where a balance between them creates an emotionally balanced situation for us. All these centers, they regulate the secretion of different hormones. Different chemical hormones are what? Chemical transmitters only. One of the hormones is cortisol, and cortisol is a hormone released by the adrenal glands, which sits over the kidneys but is controlled by the brain. So when a stressful event occurs in the environment, most people will release cortisol, but the people who recover quickly have lower levels of cortisols in general at baseline. So when cortisol is present at higher levels over a long period of time, it kills hippocampus, which is the center which gives you the context of the situation. You understand that? And people who are more responsive to stress have higher levels of cortisol. So you feel them, you find them overreacting to normal events. Now go back to your experience and look at people who under periods of stress, episodes of stress, become hyperactive, hyper responsive, and hyper reactive, because the cortisol is increasing and it is damaging the hippocampus, by which they are unable to make an accurate assessment of the situation. So the loop keeps happening, it keeps going on and on, you see. And that is how stress impacts our mental health as well. So that is all from my side, dear friends. I would like to conclude with the thought that the greatest weapon against our stress is our ability to choose one thought over another. Please bear this in mind. With this, I come to the conclusion of my talk. Thank you so much for being a lovely audience. I hope you enjoyed as much as I did. We can take up the questions now. Should you feel the need of getting in touch with me or for any of the queries um at a later stage, my coordinates are mentioned at the bottom of the slide. This is my number, which is available on WhatsApp as well. This is my mail ID, and this is the website that of my company, Synergy HR, that I represent. Okay, so I'd like to stop sharing and okay, if you can just switch on your videos, maybe. I would like to see your faces. Wonderful. Lovely being with you all. It was a real pleasure.
জয়েন করতে পারছি না জয়েন করবো কি?
I'm so grateful to you. I hope you enjoyed as much as I did. It was lovely being with you all. If there are any
Yes, sir.
questions,
Same.
you can unmute yourself and
Greetings, sir. My name is Madan. Am I audible?
yes, yes, of course, you're audible.
Sir, is there a way one can quantitatively measure a person's stress levels? Just the way we measure someone's temperature, measure his cortisol levels, and then see whether he has high stress levels or susceptible to stress, hypersensitivity to stress. Is that medically possible? Yeah. That would be
Yes,
my
there is, and what we have been is my voice echoing. I don't know why. See, we can always measure stress by the manifestation it has at a physiological level, and those measures are already available. So you measure the BP, you measure the heart rate, you measure the cortisol levels. You see, you can also measure the titers of different hormones. There are certain stress hormones that happen. Those are the ways we are using to measure the impact of stress. Otherwise, if you look at it, stress response is only a response to a situation that we are experiencing around us. So it is, we may be calling it as a stress, but it is a component of various other things. The way it gets manifested is on the body. So you can measure those parameters on the body. That is how the standard, I think that is how the impact of a stress can be measured. Do I answer your question?
Hello, sir.
Yes.
This is in continuation with the earlier question, sir.
Yeah.
Are there any treatment? I think there will be certainly treatments, but are they good? Will they have any side effects, and is it good to take them? I want to know.
There are. I'm glad you asked this question because this is something which is very common, which is very close. There are medicines, of course, there are medicines, and those medicines act on the body. So we have medicines which will probably, if you pop them up, it will lead to a reduction in your cortisol level, but that is happening mechanically. What we do not control through medicine is our response. We should understand that. It is basically our response to the to the stress condition that is producing those conditions in our body. It's like you have a very mischievous boy in your house, maybe your son or your nephew, you see, and you put him in a room, and what that boy does, he keeps writing on the wall, keeps breaking the window panes, keeps disrupting the furniture, and each time he does that, you you repair the panes, you repair the walls, you set the furniture in order, but again he does that. So the medicines available for stress, they work the same way. They work only in uh, repairing the walls, repairing the windows, setting the furniture in order. They cannot, and I repeat, they cannot reach at the level of the boy, because it is the boy who is the culprit. This boy is our mind, is our thought process. So unless we have a system, unless we have a mechanism, unless we have a medicine that reaches our mind, there won't be any remedy, and there is no medicine that can reach the mind. I wish I had a medicine I can pop and become happy. I wish I had a medicine I can pop and become calm. Yes, but that is not the case. So what do we do? What do we do to access that mind?
Probably meditation.
That is one. But the answer to this question would be in my next session, which I'll be doing with you. Okay, probably you'll be able to understand, you'll be able to have an insight there.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Thank you. Anybody else?
Yeah, sir. I want to
Yes, please.
ask one question.
Of course.
You told us that there is one region that is amygdala,
Yes, of course.
which is associated with the negative emotion like fear and all
Fear.
that.
Yeah.
So when we know that we encounter in real life any situation, and we know that now we are in this particular negative emotion. So is there means what's the solution for it? We understand this concept. Ki, abhi, this problem is there.
Yeah.
So how we should control it? How we can control it?
I wish there was a straightforward answer to that, Nupur.
Yes,
You
sir.
see, the response that we are having, why this amygdala got activated? It
Yeah.
got activated because we responded to that situation. and we responded it. Let's say, for example, you walk inside your home one day and suddenly there's a power failure. Okay,
Yeah.
there is darkness all around. You enter into the hallway and you see a shadow at the far end of the room,
Yeah.
and you live alone and you see a shadow. So what is going to be the first thought? Oh God, there is a burglar in the house. Oh God, there is some foreign person in my house. Is he going to attack me? Who do I call for help? And immediately your brain will conjure up 1 million pictures,
Yeah.
isn't it? But
Hmm.
that shadow which you saw was actually a curtain which you had forgotten to put in the right place.
Okay.
So what has happened? Because you reacted that way, immediately your amygdala got aggravated. Now understand this thing. If I take you 1 million years backward, make you travel the time, in that case, this reaction would have saved your life. Why? Because the shadow might be a hunting predator who was going to pounce on you. And you would have seen this not from the comfort of your home, but in the open land where you would have been camping, living in thatched roofs, because those were the dwellings which we used to make when we were evolving as humans. So there, the alarm, the overreaction was critical for the preservation of our life. Now it is a source for problems for us. We don't need all that. Unfortunately, our instinct, our brain has not appreciated or has not understood the difference. It keeps reacting the way it did because it has taken millions of years for us to come to this level for the brain to evolve. So it cannot differentiate. Now that overreaction, over response is not needed.
Yes.
And we have to train our brain, we have to regulate the brain into thinking that it does not need to be so overtly reactive in such situations.
Yeah.
Do I answer your question?
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Sir, I am Ram Mohan Namile.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Sir, taking periodical breaks
Yeah.
from the people and places,
Yeah.
one is not comfortable with,
Hmm.
and using the breaks to be associated with the places and the people you like
Yeah.
may to some extent help come out of the stress.
Of
And
course.
also being very busy, actively, productively, purposefully, and meaningfully in the present moment,
Hmm.
so that there is no space in your mind
Hmm.
to allow any stress related events come and occupy and disturb you. Both these things, if practiced, I think to fair extent we can get rid of this one. Your take on this?
Very, very well said. Very well said, Rammohan sir. Very well said. And if you notice, that is what the stress is. I mean, that is what the focus is these days. So you have instances where companies are sending their executives to a vacation, to a mandatory vacation. There are instances where you have seen people uh, doing things which they have been wanting to do, taking a break, taking a sabbatical, pursuing their creative pursuits and all that stuff. This is what mindfulness talks about. This is what meditation talks about. If you say whatever system we might practice in terms of meditation, we talk about meditation in terms of a agent or a tool to restore balance. And where is this balance coming from? This balance is the balance of the mind, the balance of the emotion. You see, those meditative practices lead to that. It results in an overall regulation of the stress response that we are having. Very well observed. Totally on that.
Thank you for the validation, sir.
Thank you. Thank you so very much. It's a pleasure having you. All right, dear friends, if there are no further questions, I'll beg your leave. We come back at what time, Kamruddin sir, if you are there?
Sorry, you can carry
I'd
on
like to
it.
take a
No problem.
10.
If you can, because the people are very curiously following. So
Uh,
they should not be. If you can, or else actually there is a small break that have been given, and you can continue only up to 1 o'clock now, because it is 1:30
Okay.
session, and if the time is included here in between that gap, and it can be concluded at 1 o'clock. It means there is only 1 hour more.
Okay.
As per now, already you have taken half an hour the time that is given for that.
I
So if after 1 hour
it was
continue.
such a good experience, and that at the time stressed along. So what I will request, dear friends, if you permit me, is let us not stress ourselves too much. Let's take a what shall I say? A 5 minutes break would be okay. So let's have a 5 minute break, a bio break. Okay. So it is 11:54 by my watch. I shall join you at 12 o'clock sharp. Will that be fine?
Yeah, yeah, okay.
Yeah. So let's take a bio break and let's rejoin. Lovely pleasure being with you all. Look forward to seeing you for the next session. Thank you so very much.
Thank you, sir.